This is a shortened version of what I've been doing the last few days. It hasn't been much, but or I haven't really achieved much, but it took a little while to get there, just fiddling around. So I've assembled the engine. I've got 3 of the pistons in. The reason I don't have the 4th one in is because I ended up breaking one of the piston rings, which would have been fine because previously I'd bought a couple of spares. But it turns out the spares aren't the right size. It's a bit hard to see, but these should be rings for 60 thou over, which is what this block is. And you can see the gap there is way too big. There's about a 60 thou gap, about 1.5 millimeters gap there. The spare engine that I have actually turns out to be bored 80 thou over. When I was setting all the ring gaps for the rings on here, one of the things I did is I dry fitted all of the piston rings into the block to check the gaps. And I've not found an exact figure for what the gap should be, but it should be sort of, I think, between 3 and 6 thou. So mine are all set to 3 to 4 thou. As they originally came off the engine, they were way too tight. They were much, much tighter than that, which I don't think is correct. So I carefully filed all the rings, got them all to fit nicely, and I was hoping to use one of the old pistons when I was setting up the ring gaps, because what you do is you use the piston to square the ring in the bore so you can get an accurate measurement. But that's when I figured out that those pistons won't fit in this block because it's been bored another 20 thou over. I did look at the rings that came off some of those pistons, but you can see these ones are much too big. Even though they fit perfectly in the other bore, you can see that that extra 20 thou makes quite a big difference to the ring gap. There is none here. And I guess if you were being cheap, you could file this down so it would fit. But the rings are actually sized to the bores. So even though that would kind of work, it wouldn't be right. So I'm going to get a couple more piston rings, and then I can assemble the final piston in the block. The other thing I did was I was really careful with the circlips that hold the gudgeon pins in. So it turns out you can't actually buy those British standard 9/16, I think they are, Circlips in New Zealand. Nobody had them. The place that I did ring, the little place that said they had some and they'd send them out to me, did that. It cost a bit because we're rural delivery, so I think it was $20 for 10 Circlips, and they turned out to be metric and the wrong size. The reason the metric ones won't work, you see a lot of 9/16 advertised as 14 millimeter, and a lot of them won't work because they're too thick. And I wanted to make sure they really did fit into the grooves in the piston. So I made absolutely certain they all fitted. Luckily, a friend of mine up in Auckland had some old original British Circlips, and he sent some of those down for me, and they fitted perfectly. So that was really good. The pistons, if I can get these rings out. Everything does turn over nicely. It's a bit hard with one hand. So that's all working. You can see now with the longer rings, they're 1/8 of an inch longer, so you get higher compression. But that's why I had to machine the step in the top of the piston, because even though the bore is bigger, the chamber on the head isn't. So if you don't do that, the pistons would hit the bottom of the head. Also, I had to machine the flats for the valve clearances. So that's all together. 3 of them are in there. That's all working well. So I'm pretty sure the 4th one should go in easily. I will next properly attach the flywheel. To do that, I will heat it up in the household oven. to warm it up, to expand it so that it goes really nice and tight on that taper. And then I'll do up that nut to the 140, 145 foot-pounds it needs to be. The camshafts are assembled. I had gone and set up all the end float in these to about 4th hour, I believe. And I also replaced the Woodruff keys. So my friend up in Auckland also sent me down some Imperial Woodruff keys because the ones that were in here were all homemade and they were pretty rough. So I was able to use proper 1/4 inch keys. Here's some of them here. And I accurately measured the height that they needed to be to fit the slot in the gear and machined them down on the mill so everything was nice and square and as good a fit as possible. I was able to reuse these little star tab washer things because they'd never really been done up in the past. So I've locked those over on 3 faces so they're not going to go anywhere. I am still waiting for the parts to come from the UK for the brakes, and then I should be able to get all the brake system sorted out. And I have also emailed off the DXF files for the suspension mount and the manifold plate that goes on here. I have modified that to include little tabs on the end here so that when I'm welding it I can clamp it down to help keep it flat. Thanks to Bruce for suggesting that. That was an easy modification. They may have gone away for Christmas, the engineers, so they may have already shut down, so I may not be able to do any of that over the Christmas holidays. I have also asked them if they can supply me with some mild steel bar, 60mm diameter, so that I can make the little tapered pins that go on the chassis side of things. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Riley at the moment. I'm still trying to sort out what's happening with getting the Austin 7 on the road. So that now has to go for low volume certification apparently, which is a major pain in the neck. So I'm still working through that. I'm trying to get some advice through the Vintage Car Club, whether or not that is actually correct and that is the way to go about it. There's quite a few of us in this situation. Everyone gets told different things. Nobody really knows what the process is. The low volume certifiers don't really seem to know a lot about Austin 7s. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see how that goes. Similarly for the Riley, which really is a historic replica scratch-built car. So hopefully it's not too bad, but the way you have to go about it is all kind of a bit roundabout. So the inspectors want to see it as you're building it, but you can't say it's a historic replica car until the Vintage Car Club have seen it and confirmed that. And I'm assuming to do that, they need to see it pretty much finished. So I'm trying to figure out how soon can I have the Vintage Car Club come and look at this and say, yes, that is a historic replica. That's what it's going to be, so that when I take it to the low volume certifier, there's no argument about what it is. Because I think that'll help things, because then I can say, this is exactly what it is, this is what they look like. I'm building it as best I can to be a replica of one of those. So I'm still working through that. I'm just waiting to hear back from people. And the thing with the low volume certification is I'm going to have to get this car to places for it to be inspected. Again, that's just a major pain in the neck, unless the certifiers will come out to visit me, which I don't think they'll do. I need to ring them and find out. There's only really a couple of people I could use. One's down in Wellington, an hour or so away. The other one is actually over in the Wairarapa, which to take the car to him would be a 2-hour trip, either direction. So I'm still working through that. I'm getting a bit more feedback about who might be good to use before I actually approach them. I suspect as soon as you approach them, the first thing they'll say is, oh, you need to bring the car to me to have a look at. So I want to make absolutely certain who I use is the person I'm going to use throughout the whole process. But I've always had it in mind that I'm going to have to eventually be able to tow these cars. And I've been thinking about getting another vehicle. One, to have another car, because at the moment with my new role I have to go into the city a few times a week, which means driving to the railway station. It's only about a 15-minute drive, so it's not far. But my MGB isn't really suitable for that. The Austin 7 isn't on the road, of course, and that wouldn't be suitable. So I was borrowing my girlfriend's car, but when I did that, it meant she was stuck at home without a car because she doesn't drive the MGB. So I thought, yeah, I should get another vehicle. I didn't want another project, but I'm not good with modern cars. I don't really like modern cars. I'm not used to cars with roofs, things like that. But in the end, I ended up getting that thing, which is really a totally inappropriate car for commuting 15 minutes to a railway station and back. But it's got a lot of other practicalities to it. And it's kind of my sort of car, because I guess it's British. It leaks oil everywhere. It's got Lucas electrics that are all going to go wrong. But yeah, it's a new toy. Hopefully it won't be too much of a project. It's reasonably solid. It's a 1997 Discovery 1 with the Rover V8. It's an automatic, but the manuals are hard to find here. It's in pretty solid condition. There's no rust on it. Luckily in New Zealand we don't salt the roads or anything silly like that. It's done 155,000 kilometers. And before selling it, they had an inspection done on it, and the inspection showed up a bunch of stuff. So they had about $3,000 worth of work done on it. Power steering pump, all the fluids changed, all that kind of stuff. So it goes okay. There will be little bits and pieces I want to do on it. So just tidy it up. It needs a good clean for a start. But yeah, eventually when I need to actually tow things places, that can be the vehicle to do it. So my shed, which did seem to have a lot of room before, is now starting to look a bit more full again, with multiple cars and things. But that's okay. That's the reason we got it.